For the first 19 years, I didn't knowingly meet any Jew. Didn't know what a Jew was. Every Sunday went to church. There was no other option than not to go. Very active in the church. And one day I walked past the shul and on my way to campus, and I see the doors open.
Welcome to Ordinary People with Extraordinary Stories. I'm Chana Weisberg, host of this podcast. Joining me today, we have an incredible guest. His name is Rabbi Chananya Duthy. For the first 19 years of his life, he grew up in a Christian home, and he is now the Chabad emissary together with his wife in Stellenbosch, South Africa. Welcome, Rabbi Duthy.
Wow, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much for joining us in the time change and everything and making time for us. I know it's not hard, not easy. So let's start a little with your background. Tell us a little about where you grew up and what your life was like.
So I grew up in Cape Town, and my mother's from Stellenbosch. So we in
How
Stellenbosch quite often.
how far is Stellenbosch from Cape Town?
It's about 40-minute drive.
Oh, it's like on the outskirts, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
So currently our Chabad house is on the same street as the street that my mother grew up on,
Oh,
and
wow.
my grandmother's on the next block. So
Oh,
it's a partly
incredible.
coming home.
Come everything full circle. Wow.
Yeah.
That's really special. So what was your life like for the first 19 years?
First 19 years, it was, grew up, as I said, in a Christian home.
Well, your mother was from Stellenbosch. Where was your father from?
My father was from Cape Town. He grew
Cape
up
Town.
in Cape Town. He was born in the house that I grew up in, and so that was, um, grew up in the suburbs. I went to same school as, and then my father went to public school, and for the first 19 years, I didn't knowingly meet any Jew. Didn't know what a Jew was.
You didn't know what a
Uh,
Jew was. Wow. What was your father Jewish?
No, he wasn't Jewish.
No, he wasn't Jewish. Your father and your mother were not. And so you grew up like not knowing what a Jew was. Or is it close to the Chabad house at all, or you just never saw Jews?
Never, never saw
Never
Jews.
saw Jews.
Never really interacted or drove past a synagogue. The closest interaction with a synagogue is that at one point our church was considering buying a shul that actually closed down,
Mm.
and that was like the only
The
thing
only
connection I had with the Jewish community of of Cape
Wow.
Town.
Wow. But your parents believed in God? They believed that there was a
Very much,
creator of
yeah,
this world?
yeah.
Very much so.
So
It was like a
every day, every Sunday went to church.
mm,
There was no other option than not to go.
right.
Very active in the church. I was the
Mm.
sound guy in the church,
Oh,
part of the
really?
band,
Oh, wow.
the youth minister, not a minister, but it was a youth
Involved
program director.
programmer. Wow.
So it was very often 4 or 5 times a week we were doing some programming at church. So
Interesting. And
yeah,
so what changed? Did you ever have any questions about the church philosophy or about Christian philosophy?
for the first for most of my schooling career, no, there wasn't much um, leeway or place to question.
Mhm.
Um, Growing up in my early childhood, I had a few questions, and I asked, like, uh, my parents bought me this Bible that had fun facts, and there was these fun facts were like kashrus, fill in,
Mm.
um, and yovel and things like that. And I was like, why are we not doing this? Why do I have this Christian Bible that's talking about kashrus, about what we
Keeping
shouldn't eat,
kosher.
keeping
Right.
kosher and different animals that are kosher? And I'm like, well, when we do have celebrations, there's pork, there's this, there's you know, there's nothing, there's milk and meat, there's all these things. Why? And the answer I used to get was, well, that's not for us.
Mm.
It's not for us, which was a true answer.
Right.
But
Right.
it was like, okay, so why? What is what is our connection to it?
Right.
And that answer really, there wasn't really an answer. It's like
Mm.
we draw life lessons from it, but following it, it's not for us.
Mm. Mm. So we draw life lessons from the Old Testament, as it was called,
Yeah,
but we don't actually keep it. Interesting.
yeah.
And did you have any siblings, or were you an only
I was
child?
an only child. Yeah.
Only child. Okay. And at what point did that change? Like, when did you start thinking that there was more to did you find out about Judaism?
So when um, I had in high school, I took one of my subjects I took was German,
Mhm.
and in my last year of schooling, I was chosen to go to a German exchange to a place called Kassel in the middle of Germany, and it was my first time being out of the country, or well, very far away from home, and
Mm.
a change of culture, change of community, uh, where most of the people who I interacted with didn't have a sense of religion. They didn't. They were
Mm.
very secular. Um, d- they didn't. They didn't. There wasn't place for God. They didn't see a need for God. Um, but they appreciated life. So it
Mm.
was a total culture shock,
Mm.
um, and that opened up, started my questioning. It's like, okay, so they living very moral and beautiful lives without
Mm.
God. They don't recognize that
Mhm.
there's a God. Um, or some of them are agnostic. But further than that, there was no purpose for the church. The church was a thing that old people go to.
Mm.
And um, so that was my first time away. And then
Was there
I,
a reason why you chose German, and was it
so I
common
had,
to go as a mix?
there was a choice between German and one of the native languages. And for me, I just felt like I would go further with German. I could
Hmm.
actually, go to Germany, which was
Right.
one of my goals, like uh, to live in Germany. And actually, after I graduated from university, I lived in Germany for a few years too.
Mhm.
Um,
Mhm.
my my plans was to live there full time and just settle down and integrate into German society. But obviously Hashem had different different
Different
plans for
plans.
me.
Right. So you started wondering, like, what was the role of church? What was the role of religion? Here are these people are just moral, good people, but they don't have God in their life. And where did that lead you?
So I came back and obviously finished up high school, and one of the deputy principals at the time, he always liked to like to lecture us. And one of the things that I remember till this day is that he said, like, you grew up, you're going into a new phase of life. You're going into, a lot of you are going to work, or a lot of you are going to university, and you've grown up in same bubble
Mm.
your entire life for the last 17, 18, 19 years, have you ever thought about something else?
Mm.
Have you questioned why? I went to school with a lot of Muslims, a lot of it was very diverse. Why are you in a Christian society or in a Christian bubble? Why are you in, you just happen to be in a Muslim family and you follow these religious precepts or whatever? And if you don't, have you wondered why not? And that was just in terms of religion and what setting, cultural setting we grew up in. And I thought, okay, so still, living under my parents' home, a roof.
Right.
It wasn't.
Right.
The rule was you live here, you go to church, and so to rebel and to say, I don't want to do it was like I there wasn't leeway for that, and it wasn't
Right.
a fight I was willing to start.
Right.
Um, and then a few months later, I moved to Stellenbosch as a student, and that there was a part of me who just said, "Okay, now I'm going to figure it out.
Mm.
I'm away from home, away from my parents, still in contact with them, but now I can choose for myself. I can choose to go to church. I can choose not to go to church. I can go to the clubs. I can don't go to the clubs. Um, Reinventing myself,
Mm.
and there wasn't at the time. There wasn't, Chabad on campus. There wasn't any.
Right.
The shul was basically defunct. So there was no the only societies on religious societies on campus were Christian societies, Christian churches, and some, yeah, that was it.
Mm.
And so there wasn't really a variety of questioning or changing and seeing, okay, there's different, there's Yiddishkeit. Um, and I lived on campus, but I lived in one of the furthest residences, or it's like a big frat house, like 300 guys living in a complex. And on on my way to campus, I'd always walk past the shul in Stellenbosch,
Mm.
which was
Mhm.
the shul was actually there. The shul's been there for 102 years, and the the university is only celebrating its 100th year this year.
Oh,
So the
wow. So
shul,
the
the shul,
it's really
the
old there.
campus grew around the shul,
Huh.
and so I always walked past the shul, and it was always closed. There was like nothing going on. And one day I walked past the shul and on my way to campus, and I see the doors open,
Mm.
and just like, this is my chance. Let me go see. I don't know, just out of interest. There's nothing drawing me there besides interest and like what's going on.
Mhm.
And they were just doing renovations. I spoke to the gabbai, the guy in charge looking after the synagogue. And I asked, like, do you have services? Is there a community? It's like, we're a very small community, and we only have Friday nights, and we have shul at the same time, services at the same time, all year round, still to this day, which, yeah. And that was my interest. But my interest of going to shul was more of, okay, this is what the main character in Christianity, this is probably what he did. So that
Mm.
is why I went to see. Oh, this is what he did, not
Mm.
to
Not
go
to
and
explore for
change.
yourself, right.
Yeah,
Mhm.
and it wasn't like a life-changing flash of a Sinai experience where you see the lightning, you see the thunder and you hear the lightning. It was just like, okay, this is it. And but there was like that small little voice, and it's like, oh, what's going on in here? What's going on in there?
Hmm.
And when I started my conversion, from applying to actually going to mikveh, it was 14 months.
14 months later.
Yeah, no, of
From the
14 months from the time of from applying to
right. Oh,
mikveh
okay.
was 14 months.
Wow.
But the time from the first time stepping into shul and exploring my Yiddishkeit, and what is this, asking these questions, was a 3, 4, 5 year process. It wasn't it
Right.
didn't happen
Sure.
overnight. So
Sure.
many people hear that, and that's the answer, and they think, wow, it just happened like this. And I was like, no,
Right. No,
it's
no.
a in I'd like to think, a calculated
Right.
decision, but it just wasn't calculated by me. It was
Yeah.
calculated by the Eibishter.
Oh, wow. So, what were some of the thoughts that were going through your head during those 3 to 5 years that you were going to you were going regularly to to shul then during that time?
Yeah. So, ironically, looking back, it is, it's what traditional South African Jews do. They go to shul Friday night. They have kiddush. They might go to family, and then afterwards they go clubbing. So that's what I
Mm.
did. Before I went clubbing, I went to shul, and they had no one made kiddush. We just say open up a few packs of chips and cashews and l'chaim, and they fabrang together. And that is how they celebrated that. That was their version of Shabbat,
Right.
and that was all I knew, because there was no one observant in the community.
Mhm.
But and everything else that I learned about Yiddishkeit was through Rabbi Google, Chabad.org.
Wow. And so what was pushing you to keep on coming back and to look onto Rabbi Google? Like, what was pushing you to learn more?
It was just interest, partly because my father comes from his father was Jewish, but I never
Mhm.
knew that until I went to Germany and I made friends, and my father mentioned about his father. He never did before, because he's never had a good relationship with him. And he passed away before I was even born. So I never asked about him. It was never spoken about. But this is the first information I had, and so I did some research into him and where he was, and he was German. He was a German Jew, who moved to a town, the sister town of Stellenbosch, a town over, um,
Mm.
which is the Stellenbosch community's sister community in Paul. Um, he grew up there, and somehow he got involved with my grandmother, but they never married, and he had his own family. So there was a lot of pain and hurts. So I understandably didn't, you don't push, you don't nudge. And
Mhm.
I kept it to myself that I knew this information. And that was the only thing that, okay, I had some connection to Judaism, but I knew that that doesn't make me Jewish.
Mhm.
And I never claimed to be, but it was more out of just interest and having a different community. And they I was
Just a
a
curiosity.
19-year-old hanging around with 60, 70, 80-year-olds. Was a 90-year-old. So I brought down the average age by like 40 years every time.
Right. Wow.
Uh,
Were your parents aware at the time that you had this interest?
no,
No,
I kept it from them for years. I never
for years.
mentioned. Um, yeah, I knew it would be a painful um, discussion
Transition.
and
Right.
transition. So out of respect, I kept it away, and it was my journey, and I just
Mm. Did
so
you know when you were going through the journey where it might lead you, or it was just something that you kept out of interest?
so there was in the beginning there was a guy from Namibia. He was in his 80s, and his father was also a German Jew from Namibia, and his mother wasn't Jewish, and we were the two non-Jews who had Jewish ancestry, but we weren't Jewish, and we were also regulars,
You were
and
both regulars.
we were both regulars, and we both spoke German. So we sat at the back and spoke German to each other, spoke about um, like he asked me, well, "Do you ever think you'd convert?" And I was like, "Never. I can't see myself converting." And I was like, "What about you?" He's like, "I tried, and I never." I was like, "Oh, okay, but this is where I need to be." And so we both sat there, and it's like, "Oh, this is where we need to be right now."
So something was pulling you there. You don't even realize what was pulling you, but something was pulling you to keep going back. Or was
Keep,
this
and yeah, there was just this um, yeah search and interest of why are they so different? What is
Mhm,
why they growing up in a evangelical Protestant church, the- very pro-Israel, but not necessarily pro-Jewish, because
mhm,
certain doctrines spoke not so great about the Jews, because
mm,
why did they not accept our main character as Mashiach as opposed to some?
mhm,
So there was so what I knew about Yiddishkeit was not particularly positive.
mhm,
Um, so it was just a learning experience, and there was this new community that was taking who took me in,
hmm,
and they were welcome to teach whatever they knew, and
mhm,
that was for about a few months, and
mhm,
then one one Friday night they said, "Oh, the chief rabbi of South Africa is speaking at our sister community in Paul um, in like 2 weeks, and on a Sunday. Would you like to join?" I'm like,
mm,
"Okay." And we're like, "Oh, we'll
mhm,
pick you up. We'll pick you up from your res, and yeah, you'll come and see, because you're learning. You want. They knew I was interested,
mhm,
and the time came. They picked me up, and I'm sitting in this car with four other Jews, and I was like 18 years old, 19 years old, and everybody else was over the age of 70, 75. And I'm thinking to myself, what am I doing right now? Where am I going? What is? And for the first time, I experienced a mincha, and I spoke.
Mincha's the afternoon prayer,
Yeah,
daily
after
prayer.
afternoon services, I I um, I met a rabbi for the first time. And someone came up to me, and he asked me like, "What are you doing here? Are you a student?" I said, "Yeah, I'm a student at University of Stellenbosch." And he said, "Oh, I organize the Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur services, because the community is quite small in Stellenbosch, but they bring in people from Cape Town to make the quorum, the minyan, so that all the parts for the services can happen."
Mm-hmm.
So he said, "Oh, we have meals and we'd like to have you." And I was like, "Oh, for sure." We exchanged numbers, and I got home to my res, and I asked Rabbi Gul, "What is Rosh Hashanah? When is Yom Kippur?" And I experienced Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur for the first time, just a few weeks prior, not knowing what it
Right.
was. Um, I mean, in pop culture, in America, everybody knows what Rosh Hashanah or Yom Kippur will mean, in Hanukkah. I,
Didn't know
I
anything.
didn't know
Wow.
anything about it. It
Wow.
wasn't at all relevant.
So
And
at what point did it change from something that they are doing to something that you thought would be you?
so that continued it started just after my first Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur, it plateaued,
Mm.
um, till I moved to Germany.
What do you mean
And
plateaued? You just kept on doing that
just
for
kept on doing it, went through the motions, so to say.
Mhm. Mhm.
Friday night, it wasn't whatever learning on the side I did. I printed off some reform, not even, it's like some sort of um, Kabbalistic Siddur prayer
Mhm.
book of the internet that had Friday night prayers in it, and it had a translation and transliteration, and eh, I used that as my prayer. Uh,
Mm.
Something prayer has always been something I
You were
believed
used to.
and used
Mhm.
to, and so this was my to gain some understanding of what am I saying, what are they saying,
Mhm.
um, and I think I still have it in my parents' home somewhere there, but
Mm.
uh, it's about trying to connect to the infinite. Wasn't about
Mhm.
is this way the right way? That conversation I only had once I moved to Germany. I graduated in Stellenbosch, and I moved to Germany and moved to Berlin. I just wanted to get out.
So this was your second time in Germany?
My second time in Germany, and I was working for a family, and helping running their home. And looking back at it, actually, I was living in um, a formerly very Jewish part of Berlin,
Mm.
which obviously is not Jewish anymore. But
Mhm.
in Germany, they have after the Holocaust, they in every home where there were Jews and the documented Jews, that have a plaque in front of the home on the
Mm.
sidewalk with their name, date of birth, which camp they went to, and
Mm.
any other information. And only many years later, I actually realized, oh well, because every house that I used to walk down had one of these, and I was like, oh wow, this is quite interesting.
Mm.
But
Mm.
only many years later, it clicked. I was like, I was living in one of the most Jewish German neighborhoods in Berlin,
Neighborhoods. Wow.
not
You
knowing.
imbibed it in the atmosphere.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and
Wow.
yeah. So once I moved to Germany, I found myself a church community and a shul, and I was getting myself ready to go to shul Friday night, And at that time, I knew a bit of what you do on Shabbos, what you don't do on Shabbos. And coming in, I was stopped by the security, and they asked, like, do you have any ID? What are you, where you from? What's your name? I gave them all that details. And I was like, where's your ID? I was like, well, it's Shabbat. You don't carry on Shabbos.
Wow.
And I was like, okay, go inside. So my introduction to was quite my transition into German Jewish society was quite easy in that regard, and I just went, and a few weeks later, the rabbi realized, saw that I was coming quite regularly, and he asked, like, "What do you do Friday night for the meal?" I said, "I go home. I don't have a Friday night meal." So he said, "Well, the shul has a Friday night meal after the services. Come and join." And I started meeting new Jews from different parts of the world. Um, it was it's quite a popular shul, other than
Mhm.
the Chabad of Berlin, for tourists. I met Jews from all around the world.
Oh, wow.
And
So this was Chabad of Berlin.
no, this wasn't.
This wasn't.
This was the Ashkenazi. For
Ah,
my entire
okay.
time there was
Mhm.
many people saying, like, don't go to Chabad, stay away
Oh,
from Chabad.
okay.
Um,
And
so
the rabbi didn't know that you weren't Jewish at this point?
he didn't. No,
Mm.
they asked about my community that I came from, and I was like, well, I come from the Jewish community of Stellenbosch.
Stellenbosch,
I,
right.
I I didn't even didn't even know that, like, oh, I have to preface by
Mhm.
saying I'm not Jewish.
Mhm.
Um, I, I, and this was a shul that had minyanim. It had services every day, daily services. There was a mikveh. It was the first functioning shul I was actually a part of, and as much uh, as I could go, I would, to the point where, and so I spoke German. I
Mm.
started learning. I had a lot of time to learn about what you do, what is Yiddishkeit, but the halachot,
The
to the point
laws.
where, to the laws, to the point where you had Israelis who lived who were who lived in Berlin, and the most of the congregation were Russian or from the ex-Soviet Union. Um, so they looked at me as this German Jew,
The knowledgeable one, right?
the knowledgeable one who's German Jew, and I was like, if they only knew,
Mhm.
they only knew. It's like,
Wow.
oh, I came to Germany speaking German, um, and they just assumed that I just didn't want to burst their bubble.
Mhm.
And at the same time, I was like, who am I? What am I doing?
Mhm.
Um, I'm I'm going to shul more often, and to the point where I stopped going to church
Mhm.
because that didn't feel like it was my place anymore. It wasn't a part of me. But at the same time, I knew that I wasn't Jewish. So
So
um,
why did you feel that you weren't a part of the church? Like, what attracted you to what you were seeing in Judaism?
it was more about um, the truth. For me, that was also, it's like, what is the truth? If if we say that this is the book that we follow and this is our guide to follow the will of God, then shouldn't we strive to do it and not
Mhm.
see it as a lapsed contract or a lapsed relationship that we're now not fulfilling? We don't have to fulfill, but it's expected of us, but we don't have to. It just as I say,
There were
one
so many
plus one,
contradictions, right?
so many contradictions, and one plus one can't equal three. It
Mm.
just, I
There was
was
something
looking for
missing
something.
there.
There was something missing, and what I've been taught in the church just didn't resonate with me, and
Mhm,
the feeling of community. I saw a much stronger sense of community
mhm,
in the Jewish people, and at the same time, what I read was like, if you want to convert, they'll send you away, and you have to basically beg to come in. And I was like, I didn't feel that. At no
right.
point did I feel that. Um, it, and looking back on it, after learning a lot of the Torah and Chassidus, you see the divine providence, Hashgacha Pratis in it, that it it should have been so much different. Should have not to get into a shul
Mm,
should have been so much more different and difficult, and it wasn't.
hmm.
So
It was
if
almost like you were being led. You were being, like, held and pulled.
yeah, and
Mm,
to the point that still for that entire 2.5 years of living in Germany, I still didn't get to a point of, am I going to do this? Am I not going to do this? Am I become Jewish? I'm not going to. And there was the Syrian refugee crisis in Germany, which led to my visa not being renewed,
mhm,
and I had to move back to South Africa, which
mm,
was something I didn't want to do. But again, that was the will of God, and so now I had to go back to all I knew was Friday night in Stellenbosch. I had no
mm,
connection to the Jewish community in Cape Town, and whenever I tried to get in, I was stopped. I stopped by the
mhm,
security as, who are you?
mm,
Who do you know? All the the normal
mhm,
questions, and to the point I was like, wow, okay, they don't want me in Cape Town,
mm,
so let me just go back to what I do know in Stellenbosch. And that went on for a few months, to the point of it came time for Pesach. And I phoned up the rabbi of the shul, and I said, what is the shul doing for Pesach? And he said, we don't do Pesach. Pesach happens, but we don't do anything for Pesach. But this year, there are two Chabad rabbis from Brooklyn and their families. They're coming to make a Seder. Um, and they're inviting the entire community. So whoever wants to come, please come. So I said, oh, sign me up. I said,
mhm.
okay. And happens to be I was the only person of the community who joined,
Oh,
and
wow.
it was my first seder and my first Chabad seder, eating matzah out of plastic bags and changing.
Right.
And it's like, what is going on here? And it was, these are the Chabad, these are the people at the shul in Berlin who said, oh, you don't get involved with Chabad. And I was like, oh, getting involved with Chabad? What is, I don't see,
That's the problem.
what's the problem?
Mhm,
And to the point of, Pesach happened, we, and here and there, at every little point, there was this guidance and explanation of, what are we doing right now? What is this? What significance? And, the blessing of the priestly family, the Birkas Kohanim, was explained to me, and it's like, oh, the custom in Chabad that we look at the chazan, the person leading the prayers, and just by looking at it, there's a divine light that comes down, and we tap into it. It's like, wow. And to the point that it was Mashiach student, we experienced this, like, oh wow, this is a crazy event. And they said, oh, we tomorrow morning after Pesach is finished, we're going on a hike. We found out there's this mikveh, a kosher mikveh, which is a body of water, and in the valley, and we're going to have a hike and go and mikveh, and afterwards pray. I was like, oh, okay. And we met up, and we're driving to the place where we're going to start the hike, and this rabbi is talking to me, well, and telling me Chassidus of Pesach, and this is the first time I'm hearing words of Chassidus, and that got me. I was like, wow, this just is true. It resonated with me. To the point that this rabbi, once I moved to America after being in yeshiva, was the person who walked me down the aisle to the chuppah.
Really? Wow.
So
Wow.
yeah, it is.
You stayed close with him.
We stayed close, yeah. And so that after that first experience and taste of Chassidus, I was like, this is what I want to tap into. And I always joke, I was a Lubavitcher before I was even Jewish. And
So it was the depth, the truth that you felt that was there
yeah, and
that
so
attracted
then
you.
after living in Germany and traveling around Europe, I was like, oh, there's always a Chabad in most places. What are the chances that there's a Chabad in Cape Town? And so that was Shabbos Muvarachim, the Shabbat that we blessed the new month, Shabbos Muvarachim Iyar, the month that the Shabbat that we blessed the new month of Iyar, is when I went to the Chabad in Cape Town, and I went quite early because I was like, oh, they're probably going to ask me all the security questions and going to check me out, and so then I didn't know that the organizers and the people who went to the Rosh Hashanah in Stellenbosch also davened in this shul. So the person outside the security asked me, like, who do you know? And I was like, mentioning these guys' names. And they're like, okay, go inside. You
Oh,
know
wow.
them.
Wow.
And that is, again, this divine providence and Hashgacha Pratis of just an easy transition. And from there, people asking, oh, which shul do you go to? And I said, oh, Stellenbosch. And like, oh, Stellenbosch is one of the oldest communities in South Africa. So, and many families from Cape Town also come from Stellenbosch. So they knew people there, and it's a famous community. So just being associated with the community helped me just integrate into the Jewish community of Cape Town. And still there, I was like, this is going to be a life-changing decision to walk. And my support structure was basically on its last legs. If I would do this, I'd be totally alone.
Sure.
But at the same time, just going more often to shul and learning. It was all purely for the sake of learning and connecting with the divine. And people saw that's why I was here. And I for the first few months of going, I couldn't get it over myself to drive on Shabbos.
Mm.
So I would sleep in my car
Oh,
on
wow.
Shabbat.
Wow.
And
Wow.
one of so I would be invited to Shabbat meals, and then I'd go back. And I only drove on Shabbos once because my car was broken into. They tried to steal my car,
Mm.
and I was like, okay, I gotta go. And
Even though you weren't obligated to
even
keep
though
Shabbat
I
at
wasn't,
that point.
I just couldn't. I couldn't get it over to drive on Shabbat. And after a few weeks and months of being in the community, one Shabbat afternoon, I was walking with a few friends that I made in the community, and I mentioned like, oh no, I don't drive on Shabbat. I sleep in my car. And this guy was like, he
Mm.
froze, and he became quite frustrated with me. It's like, no, you can't do that. And it's like, but what other option do I have? I no. I'm like, am I gonna sleep in your house? And he's like, okay, so I don't have a room for you, and I have a couch, but it's
Mm.
in my living room where we have Shabbat meal and the lights are on. That's your option. And I was like, okay, so if you're really serious about it, I'll do it.
It's better than
So
a car.
better than a car. And so I started just on Shabbat sleeping on a friend's couch
Mm.
till I met another friend who was also on his own journey, where his now wife was also in the process of considering, are they going to convert, is she going to convert or not? And Baruch Hashem, they converted, and they didn't live in the Jewish community either. And so we spoke about it, and it was like, oh, sleeping on this guy's couch for Shabbos. And he said, oh, wow, so we want to be much closer to the Jewish community, especially on Shabbos. And his grandmother's partner had a a a flat, an apartment in the Jewish community that wasn't being used, and they were going to stay there, and it has a few extra rooms. And
Mm.
if you want, you can join us. And that became our Shabbos flat, and we turned it into our first Chabad house.
Really?
We kashed the kitchen, and we bought new plates, and we started hosting. So, and I would get one of the Chabad Bochrim who were around. They would be the mashgiach, turn on the flame, and watch me cook. And
Wow.
uh, so we made sure everything was done kosher, even though there was no obligation. And then um, I realized, like, I'm this far in,
Mm.
and I'm in a community that is supposed to, according to their laws, be pushing me away at all costs,
Mm.
and it's not.
Mm.
And the community that I came from, the friends and family that I came from, were couldn't care less that I wasn't showing up
Mm.
for events and family occasions, and because it was Shabbos or it was this, and no one checked in. And here, if I don't come for Shabbos, people message you and they're like, "Oh, where were you?" If you daven at a different shul, and it's like, "Oh, where were you?" And
Really?
so the people
Mm.
who had no obligation to look after you were looking after me,
Right.
and we were learning together. We were learning about becoming Jewish and about Yiddishkeit together. We started
So they knew that you were not Jewish.
They knew. Yes. At that time, everybody
And
knew.
did your family realize that you were getting so close to Judaism?
No,
No.
I
You kept it a secret.
I kept it a secret till the time that till the day that my car got broken into. I
Mm,
came back and my mother asked, like, you said you were to go and stay by friends. And I explained, and it broke her heart. What can I say?
mm, mhm,
I knew that. So, and from then we just didn't speak about it.
mm,
Just and it's taken a long time till we've come to terms with it. I don't. Um, Grandchildren soften the blow.
mm. Right. Right. Wow.
and
Wow.
and so till that point, my family didn't know, and
Right.
certain friends, close friends, knew, um, but most of them just disappeared. And so at that point, it was like I literally have no one besides the
Mhm,
Jewish people, and
mm,
that wasn't the pushing factor. But I said, if I have to be real with myself, this is where I feel drawn to, where I feel at home, where my neshama feels at home. Um, and I started the process. And as I said, from the official time of starting the process till the time of mikveh, was 14 months.
14
And
months for the conversion. That's very fast.
yeah,
But
and
I guess you already were living it so much.
yeah, I mean, we basically had our own Chabad house where
Right.
where and one Shabbat we had 30 guests for Shabbos that and
Wow.
myself and my friend, we were sponsoring, we were funding this alone. We weren't
Wow.
getting weren't fundraising for anything, and whoever could bring a bottle of wine would bring a bottle of wine. But at the end of the
Mm.
day, most of the costs were
Was
from
on
us.
you.
Yeah, and it was I was like, okay, we've got to do this. We no one was sitting there and saying, don't do it, but they were, if you're going to do it, we here for you. And that
Mm,
was, and I think the community saw the the truth in my actions, and they
mhm,
could see it, that, as you said, I'm living it, that
mhm,
it's people who would help wherever they could.
mhm,
And I had an outstanding balance. I met with the best in the based in the they call it ecclesiastic judicial.
The court of Jewish law.
Sure, yeah, they have some long English name for it. And the Jewish court, and they said, okay, you from our side, we're ready for you to go to mikveh and become Jewish, but
Mm,
you still have a balance to pay of at the time it was what, 14,000 rand.
mm,
I think at the time it was about 1,400 US
mhm,
dollars, and for me it was a lot of money. I
mhm,
was paying off what I could, but like, oh, and I just sat there like, I, I've been doing everything I could,
mm.
and now I have an opportunity, but now is money, is that the only thing that's going to be stopping me from becoming Jewish? And someone said, start like a GoFundMe, and
Mm,
within 13 hours,
mm.
100% from only Jews gave, because they wanted me to be a part of the family.
Wow.
In
Mm,
13 hours. I
mm.
mean,
Wow.
from all different parts of the world, in America, mostly from South Africa, in Israel, where the people that I've been in touch with in Germany, they they wanted to be part of. this part of the journey. And that happened. And soon after, or just prior to that, I was working for a big American corporation, but for the German division, and they wanted me to start working on Shabbos, and I immediately gave my resignation. But then I was like, I still have to pay off this based in fees, and now I don't
Right.
have a job. And then they say, if you don't have a job, you can't convert. And I found a job in the Jewish community, and a few months after I converted, I was speaking to my boss at the time, and I was saying, I recently converted. I want to keep my job, but I'd also like to go for a few months and learn in yeshiva. And he looked at me and he said, I know you guys. You don't come back from yeshiva. So it's either you have a job or you go and you don't have a job. And ironically, his son is now one of our students that we service at Chabad on campus, one of our kids.
Really? Wow.
So it was also a full circle. And a few after that conversation, a few months later, unfortunately, things went bad in the business, and we were laid off.
Mm.
And I was leaving the office after being told that the entire office is closing, and I said, Hashem, if you want me to go to yeshiva, you don't have to close the entire office.
Wow.
And
Mm.
after that, I went to Mayanot in Jerusalem, and I learned there for about 2.5 years. And I was there until COVID. And during COVID, my mentor, my mashpia, said, "I think it's time, your age and where you are in your life, you need to start looking at getting married."
Mm.
And I'm like, I can't even get into a meter of anyone outside of my home. How can I be dating, especially a new person? If this is social distancing, how can I get married? And he said, "Oh, this Zoom dating." And actually on 5th of Elul, we started meeting with my wife on Zoom, and we started. She was in Crown Heights in Brooklyn, and I was in Jerusalem in Israel, and we were. It was a bit shaky in the beginning, but we got through it, and we
I
were.
would love to have your wife for another episode. Maybe we can have her come on for another episode, or maybe both of you
She has a
again to hear
she has a
her
JLI.
story.
She has
Yeah,
a
I hear
JLI
it's wow,
interview. So yeah.
that would be really
So
nice.
yeah, for
But you
sure.
got married. It looks like it worked out. You got married, and you decided to go back to your hometown on Shlichus.
Yeah. So in our conversation on the Shidduchim, um, one of the obviously important questions, like, what are we going to do if we get married? And where will we live? And she's American from North Carolina, and she said, under no circumstances do I want to live long term in America. So I
Mm.
said, okay. So if that's the case, what are we gonna do? Israel? It's like, yeah. And it's like, oh, Israel, Germany, because she also lived in Germany in different parts. When I was not in Germany, she was living in Germany, so we missed each other there. And I said, oh, what about South Africa? And she said, I'm open to it. And what about Stellenbosch? I want to give back. There's no Chabad there. We could, maybe start Chabad house in Stellenbosch. I said, okay, we can look into
Wow.
it.
Wow.
And from there, after 5 months of never meeting in person, and dating on Zoom, I finally got after a long bureaucratic ordeal, got to America, and I landed on the Tuesday, and on the Sunday we were engaged. We went to the oil, to the Lubavitcher Rebbe's resting place, and a few months after that we got married. And after living in Crown Heights for 3 years, we went on Shlichus on Pesach Sheni. On the second chance, we took our
Wow.
lives took a second chance. We
Hmm.
moved to Stellenbosch on Shlichus and
Stellenbosch.
yeah,
That's amazing. Wow.
yeah,
Rabbi Duthy, that's such an amazing story. I would love to have both of you maybe again, or you with your wife again to
sure.
hear more of it. But looking back at your story, like what comes to mind when you see yourself as that 19-year-old searching and now living such a different life? Like what message would you want to give to people out there?
To take it one day at a time. Even in myself, I have to remind myself of that 19-year-old of
Right.
we live in such a distracted um, world. We just trying to be distracted all the time, and we're living for the future, and we beat ourselves up over the past, and we fail to live in the present. And that 19-year-old me was very much didn't plan and didn't want to plan and didn't uh, he learned from the past, but he wanted to change the future. And
Wow.
so that is something even I need to sit and
Right.
think about and take notes about. And it's easy to get caught up into what program am I going to do, what teaching, what my Rosh Hashanah drasha, my speech for Rosh Hashanah to inspire the people. But what am I doing now? How am I changing just to be a better person than I was yesterday?
Mhm.
That is an important lesson, a simple lesson, but quite important. Who are we?
Life, life's
Who
lesson.
yeah? Who were we yesterday? And how can I be better than yesterday? Yeah.
Beautiful. Thank you so much for joining us, Rabbi Dathi. We really appreciate it.
Thank
You
you
should
so
have
much.
continued success in all your shlichus work and all your with your family. And we'd love to do a part 2 on this.
Oh, for
Thank
sure.
you.
Thank you so
Thank you
much.
so much. Wow, what an incredible story with Rabbi Duthy, Rabbi Chananya Duthy. I am very excited to hear a follow-up. Tell me if you are too, with his wife and how they met and what was her background, because I found that so intriguing. What I found so spectacular about the story was his search for truth, and that kept on coming forward, how he was looking for the truth, how he was something was pulling him. At the beginning, it wasn't even so much a search. It was just something was pulling him to see more. What are the Jewish people like? What was it all about? This is part of his Christianity. He wants to understand the origins of it. And that search for truth kicked in at a later time when he really felt like he wanted to understand more and he felt like he found something. And that led him to even sleeping in his car on Shabbat. Wow. So that he wouldn't have to drive. And until he finally found that apartment, using that apartment as a place where he was inviting others. Throughout the story, you could just see he didn't really have a support system of others who were helping him. He was giving up everything, basically, his family, his former friends, and yet he felt some kind of pull and some kind of connection with the Jewish people. He talks about how they were supportive and how people really did welcome him in, to the point that he did that GoFundMe, and then within 13 hours, people were responding, and that I found very interesting. But throughout the whole the whole interview was so much the humility that he had in just trying to find where it is that he has his part in the world, the search for truth. And you wonder, like, what are we doing in our search for truth? As he said at the end, to become a better person every day, to look at ourselves and just to wonder how we can change and what we can do to further improve ourselves so that we can assure ourselves that we are on the path of truth. If you enjoy watching these interviews, I hope you are subscribed to Chabad.org/extraordinary. We love to hear from you. I hope if you're watching us on YouTube, you've subscribed to our channel, you've given us likes, you've made a comment. We love to read all the comments that you leave. It just fills our day with happiness, and it's great to receive your comments. Thank you so much for watching, and leave a comment if you would like to hear from Rabbi Duthy's wife about what her journey was like, because I certainly am curious. Thank you so much for watching and for being part of this extraordinary community.